Live. I'm Ken Ray.
And I'm John Champion. Each week on Mission Log Live, you are the star. You call us, you chime in with your questions and comments. Tonight, we welcome so many guests. It's like the battle of the network stars up in here. It's like the Brady Bunch Variety Hour. It's like that time that Lucy and Ricky went to Hollywood. There's just so many guests tonight, is what I'm trying to say. We'll meet Bobak Ferdowsi from JPL. We'll meet Holly Amos from Star Trek Adversaries. And up first, you'll meet our friend Jason Golston from the virtual world, but for real. As always, we want your questions, your comments. Everyone is ready for that. And we are here for you. So you can click on the link to join our Zoom meeting, or you can use the one tap from your smartphone. You can even call us the old-fashioned way, just like the settlers did. Dial us up at 669-900-6833 and enter the meeting code you'll find in the show description and in the comments.
I get to do the romper room thing today. I see, I see Chris, I see Donna, I see Paul, I see Myra, or maybe Mara, I'm not sure. I see Wes. So many people joining us live tonight, and thank you, everybody who is joining us live. If you're watching it as it happens on Facebook or YouTube, thanks for that, as I say, and thanks to the people who are catching the video later on Facebook and YouTube as well. Now, maybe you don't want to watch. Maybe you like to listen while you work. Hey, that's cool. We'll have the audio for this show up and its very own podcast feed within hours of this show ending. Just search for Mission Log Live wherever you get your podcasts, or make it easy. Go to podcast.roddenberry.com, where you will find links to all of our shows. That's Mission Log Live, Mission Log, The Trek Files, Women at Warp, Priority One, and, other stuff as other stuff crops up. We do have one last request, because we are needy people. Wherever you are and whenever you are consuming this, head to the source, hit like, hit share. If you download it from iTunes, head back there and maybe give us a few stars, because more people watching is more people playing along. And wouldn't that be so much fun?
So we will meet our guests so soon. So now is the time to call in and be ready. Again, click that Zoom link or call us at 669-900-6833. And before we get to that, Ken, how about we check in on the polls?
It starts to sound like we don't actually have guests. You're like, oh, we're going to be talking to people, but first. Yeah. Oh, no, we got people to talk to, but first. Yes, but first, let's talk about the poll. Last week, we, of course, had the question about the holodeck. Is an experience on the holodeck real? Was the question that was asked, and just about everybody seems to think so. Man, Kirk would have a word with you people, wouldn't he? 71% say yes, an experience on the holodeck is real. 29% say no, it's not. I kind of want to stop doing the poll, man, because every time we get the answers back, I just want to ask more questions. Mostly of those 29% this time. Like, why not? But,
A funny thing, and it was a good chat last week, and after the show, we stayed on the line for nearly a half an hour more with Dr. Ali Matu talking about that very thing, about experience versus reality, and it was so cool, and too bad you all weren't there for that. So
we should have run tape, and we could have just played it back later and made it a supplemental or something.
We should have one day. Tonight's poll question, well, you will find out why we're asking in a moment. A little bit surprised at the early returns on this. Simply enough, are you going to Star Trek Las Vegas? Are you going? Only 6% of you say yes, you are going, and 94% of you say no. Interesting to me, Ken, because I feel like we meet so many people there who do listen to the show. So I would just assume that there's a big crossover there. But as of right now, the people who have answered, only a tiny fraction of you who are going to Vegas so far. Maybe that'll change.
So there are two reasons that we asked that question tonight. One is because one of our guests is actually going to, well, actually, I would bet at least two, maybe three of our guests are going to be there, but one of them is definitely going to be there. The other reason, though, that we ask it is because I've started dreaming about it.
Yeah, that's weird.
It's early. Yeah. It's early for that, but yeah, I'm having those. Hey, if you're dreaming about it, why not call us? 669-900-6833. John, would you please introduce our guest this evening, or our first guest, rather?
Yes, our first guest tonight is from Sansar Sansar.com. Yeah, Sansar, not a country, it's a place on the web. His name is Jason Golston, and he'll have to tell us exactly what he does for Sansar, but we're about to blow everybody's minds with some cool stuff coming from Mission Log, from Roddenberry. And Jason is the person on the Sansar end who is helping to coordinate that. Jason, welcome to Mission Log Live.
Hey guys, thanks. Thanks for having me. It's good to chat with you, John, Ken. Yeah, I'm Jason Golson. I'm the head of Sansar Studios. Sansar is a virtual experience platform full of user-created worlds. You can almost think of it as almost a universe. We have thousands of worlds for people that have been built by our users, and anyone can go in there as long as you have a PC and a Windows PC, create an account, log in, begin exploring worlds, and with your avatar, customized avatar, and all of that. We're working with you guys to create an interesting new experience, and I'm really excited to be here today to talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah.
Can we back up just a tiny bit?
Yes,
Because
sir.
like if you pick up like an Oculus Rift, and I say that, like they're free in breakfast cereal, but if you pick up an Oculus Rift, Oculus is going to toss you into a bunch of stuff that's like, hey, check this out. Hey, check this out. You, I mean, is the reason for Sansar because of the user generated part of it? I mean, why Sansar?
There's a couple of things. So Sansar is a new virtual experience platform from the makers of Second Life. We've been in this user created world line of work now for a while, and we find that there's kind of nothing more engaging and more varied and interesting and really inspiring than the work built of the worlds built by these communities. And so, Second Life has been around a long time, and we hope to see it continue to be around for a really, really long time. But when we looked out at the computing landscape and the technologies that were emerging, VR, AR, mobile, though we tried, we thought we needed to kind of build something new, to take advantage of all the latest technology, all the best practices. And so that's what gave rise to Sansar, was building a new platform to take advantage of all this new technology, including and especially VR. And in our case, we support the Oculus Rift, the HTC Vive, and the Windows mixed reality headsets by way of Steam VR. And so we built our own engine. It's all our own technology. Our experiences, the worlds that the users make and the ones built by Sansar Studios are all social. So we can all get there. All of us could be there right now, hanging out, chatting like we are now, except with avatars inside of, name the place.
Very cool. So you kind of hit on the two things that I was going to ask. And one is, well, how do we participate? So you already said Windows PC, Oculus, or the HTC headset. So that's what people need from a hardware standpoint to join in.
One note, you can actually log in with your regular PC. You do not have to have a headset in order to participate. So we support desktop presentation as well. So you can, with your laptop, log in and just, as you would any other standard PC game. Because there's not there, while the number of headsets out in the world continues to go up, there's still a lot of people that are just using their standard desktop monitors, and that will be the case for a while yet. And we want to make sure they can participate in all the fun as well.
So we're kind of dancing around the big question here, which is, what are we going to do? And we're going to reveal part of that tonight. There's another part coming somewhere down the road, but and that has to do potentially with Star Trek Las Vegas. But what we're inviting people to is an event that we're hosting on May 22nd. You guys came to Roddenberry. We started all these chats. Well, what could we do in the virtual space that has a tie-in to what we do already, which is this kind of interaction with our listeners? And we wanted to do something cool and fun and very Trek to show off this technology and this new kind of partnership that Roddenberry is doing with Sansar. So without further ado, I'm going to ask our technical director, Brandon, to start popping in that video that we've got and some of the photos that you sent us, and you can tell us what it is that we're looking at. I believe we've got that video queued up right now.
It's playing right now. So these are some screen grabs. So some video captured straight out of Sansar of the bridge from the original Enterprise, from the original series. And so the plan is, and I guess I could speak to it, is, we're gonna hang out in there. We're gonna hang out with John and Ken and whoever wants to swing by. And we can watch this podcast live there on the bridge, and then hang out for a little while after, and John and Ken will swing by where we can continue the conversation and debate.
Yeah, so the way we look at it is it's not necessarily a formal show like we do here, like we do on the regular Mission Log, but it is a place to hang out. For right now, it's sort of the Mission Log clubhouse, if you will. So after the show, a little after 8 o'clock on May 22nd, we'll all be able to go in there, and people are already chiming in, talking about how absolutely beautiful that rendering is, and noticing those little details like the lights reflecting off the consoles. And yeah, truly, it is a remarkable rendering that we partnered up with Otoy, who does just incredible effects and 3D object rendering. So we're very pleased to be able to get that and present that for free. It's just a location on Sansar, and you can tell us how we can direct our listeners there on May 22nd. What do they need to do?
Yeah, so everyone needs to visit sansar.com, where you're going to create a user account, and then just be on the lookout. You could please log in, check out some of the other cool places to go. We have stuff for Ready Player One, official Ready Player One stuff, which was really awesome. There's cool NASA type, museum, and there's a lot of other really cool stuff to check out in Sansar. But you log in, and then keep an eye out, and John and Ken and the crew at Mission Log will send out a link whereby you click that link, and it will direct you straight to the bridge of the Enterprise, where you can enjoy the podcast and hang out with other fans of the show, and hang out with John and Ken.
And that view screen is live. We can put things in that view screen. Who knows? You have no idea what we might put in that view screen. Fair warning to everybody who joins Hangout on the 22nd.
It'll be PG.
Yes, it will. Thank you for clarification there.
So we'll actually be talking about this a bit more in the weeks to come. I mean, between now and then. But Jason, thank you very much for coming in and sort of hipping everybody to it. Remind everybody one more time, if you could, where it is that they should go to get more information, and then if they want to follow you on social media or things like that, or follow Sansar on social media, how do they go about doing that as well?
So on social media, our handles at Sansar Official. I'm just Jason at Jason_Golston. We're always tweeting about different things happening on the platform, all kinds of interesting news and events all the time. But to get involved, to give Sansar a whirl, and check out some of the experiences, as well as the one we're starting to talk about here, Ken, just sansar.com. Download the client and create your account, download the client, and start exploring, start creating. Anyone can start building their own worlds for free.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason. Obviously, we got a lot to do between now and then. We'll have you back, and we talk all the time. So thank you again for all the work that you've done on this, and I can't wait to show it off to people in that world.
Yeah, we're super excited, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right.
See you then.
Take care. Till next time.
We should remind people how to get in touch with us, shouldn't we?
We should.
Okay. Click the Zoom link. Okay, that's almost it, but not exactly. You can also call, pick up the phone and actually call 669-900-6833. That number again, 669-900-6833, and then use the meeting code that should be on your screen. And that would be great.
Yeah.
Hey, so it's Bobak.
It is, and here's the thing, and I know that Holly corrected me, but you have to understand that for years and years and years, I lived in Chicago. There's Bobak's, which is
Yeah.
a Polish like grocery store, and it's just amazing. And
Yeah.
for decades, I've heard that name in my head. So I apologize right away to Bobak because I will mess that up a million more times.
Well, I mean, the good news is you're reading it wrong. So you're reading. So that's something.
Yes,
But
yes,
still,
that is
yeah.
good. So without further ado, and since I got it right once, I will now introduce our next guest, and that would be Bobak Ferdowsi. He is a systems engineer at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and he is, interestingly enough, the only person I know in real life who is on knowyourmeme.com. That is no small feat. Maybe I'll have him explain that when he comes on. But even beyond that, I know that he is a huge Star Trek fan. And that has definitely played an influence on his steps into the world of real science. So I want to hear about that today. And he does some killer Star Trek cosplay. Like one of my favorites, the terry cloth wearing Spock from Star Trek 4, that long terry cloth robe. He nailed it. He absolutely nailed it. So without further ado, let's welcome Bobak. Are you there, sir?
Hello, and thanks for having me.
There he is. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for being on. I appreciate it. What's interesting to me is you just like in your introduction, John, and forgive me, but you left out the thing that most people would know Bobak from.
Well, but here's the thing, though. Why is he on knowyourmeme.com? He's on knowyourmeme.com because he's there as the Mohawk guy.
Right. The Mohawk guy who worked for NASA, not just the Mohawk guy, because that could also be a Star Trek 4 thing, actually.
Oh, that could be.
Because there was a Mohawk guy there, too. Do us a favor, if you could, Bobak. Just give us, an encapsulated life story. I know. That's easy,
sure.
right? How did you end up at JPL?
So I grew up in the Bay Area, and my parents are very encouraging people. So they bought me like a lot of Lego growing up, and sort of went from there to kind of loving engineering. So I had this curiosity about how things work. They let me take apart things around the house, like electronics, with limited success putting them back together. And that kind of fostered my love of just engineering. I think that was the grassroots. Along the way, of course, I think Star Trek plays a factor in that. My aunt moved from Iran to the United States, and she was my roommate for a few years when she was first getting here. And she had watched the original series. I was already into TNG at that point, but she had watched the original series in Iran, of course, dubbed. And it was something that we could watch together, though, in the States, because she knew enough English and she was already familiar sort of with the stories. And I loved Star Trek. So that's how that kind of got influenced. And I think for me, growing up in a mixed household of like an Iranian American household, especially in the 80s, when tensions were definitely higher, I think the idea of this like united human, frontier of Star Trek had a lot of appeal. And so that kind of led, decision by decision towards working for an agency like NASA, where I feel like we're working on behalf of the United States, of course, but ultimately like as a space, as a human endeavor that we can all share in. And that's, so I went to college for that, for aerospace engineering, went to grad school, luckily got hired immediately at JPL after grad school, and the rest is meme history.
All right, so let's talk about that meme history then. You early, what was it, 2012, if I'm right? The Mars rover, the Mars rover mission, and there you are at mission control, and all this great footage of people watching so intently to what's happening with that landing, and everything just going picture perfect. And there's a shot of you being very excited about all of this, and you stand out. You stand out because you're the only person in the room who's got a mohawk, for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly your social media presence exploded and everybody knew your name. Tell us a little bit about that.
I mean, obviously we were pretty busy on console, working the landing. There's not a lot necessarily for us to do in that evening. I think people who watched it may kind of vaguely remember it, but Mars at that time is 14 minutes away at the speed of light. So most of what we're doing is just checking boxes and making sure everything works the way we expected it to work, and making sure that when we hand the spacecraft over to the surface team who's ready to operate on Mars, that they have like a healthy spacecraft on Mars. So we were, just kind of looking at the telemetry, checking it off, and there's obviously a lot of cameras trained on us, and I think we were sort of more aware of the cameras sometimes than we were of the telemetry. It was. I started getting text messages from friends somewhere in the night, like, "Hey, people are talking about you," or whatever, and it wasn't really until the next morning where I think everything caught on. So I had to be back at work at 7 a.m. and we landed at 10:30. And of course we went out to celebrate afterwards too, the whole team. And I looked at my email as I was coming into work. And I at the time, it was when I was like, oh yeah. I had like notifications turned on for when someone would follow me. So it'd send me an email, and it was just like, inbox was just like 3,000 or so messages of just like, so-and-so's followed you, so-and-so's followed you. And I think that's when I really realized that it was more than just like, oh, they're chatting about you, sort of situation. And then a couple of days later is when the president called the team to congratulate the team on the landing. And he made a reference to, like, oh, you guys don't look like the old NASA anymore, and here you have a certain Mohawk guy there, and that's how the name stuck. But it's good. People are probably familiar with an older NASA, or certainly like the space shuttle of the 1980s NASA, and I think our room in general looked a lot younger and more modern, and maybe more like people that you would see walking around the streets of LA. Which is great. I want people to look at that and be like, I can be a part of that.
I was going to ask you about that. I read a quote where you said, if my Mohawk gets a few more people excited about science and this mission, that's awesome. I mean, obviously you have a job at JPL, but do you see generating interest in science as part of your job as well? Is that something that you feel is important to, like, for you personally to do?
More than before, definitely. I mean, I always thought it was important. I'm obviously the product of somebody who had the benefit of parents coming into our classrooms, and even was lucky enough in middle school to have an astronaut come talk at our school. And I think all of those are amazing experiences. I just think the more people you can get out there, and the more you see someone who looks like yourself doing it, or that not necessarily looks like yourself, but even as from the town that you're from, or whatever it is that can connect you to that path, and make it sort of a realization that this person is not that different from you, right? So like, I'm from Oakland and I go give talks in Oakland public schools. I obviously am not exactly like everybody there, but the whole point is like, oh, you're from this neighborhood, and you too can have I think a happy career in a science or in an engineering field. So for me, that's what it boils down to. And I think just if you're handed an opportunity like I was during the landing, I felt like a social responsibility to do with that like as much positive as I can, and I'm just glad that people are excited. I still get lots of parents or of kids who ask questions sometimes on behalf of their kids. I try to answer as many messages or emails and stuff as I get. So it's great. I want more people to love it as much as I do. I think it's a very satisfying career, and I think the world needs it. I mean, I just look at it and I'm like, we need smart solutions to difficult problems.
Go ahead, Ken.
Well, I actually wanted to double back on something that you said earlier. We've talked to scientists before, both at different shows, as well as here on this show, where people watch Star Trek and they're turned on by the scientists, and thus they became a scientist. I talked to a guy who was a pilot one time because he thought it was really neat that you could fly a spaceship, and so he wanted to do the closest thing, which was to become a pilot. I'm fascinated listening to you talk that you say one of the things that turned you on about Star Trek, I mean, yes, the science, obviously, but then also the fact that it was a bunch of people from a bunch of different backgrounds working together. Was there did one hold more sway over the other, or were they both? I mean, were those hand in hand things the same way they were on the show? I mean, did you watch it and first see science, or did you watch it and first see the United Nations on a spaceship?
I probably, honestly, if you ask me, I'd probably United Nations on a starship. And I've often joked about if I had a second career, I would be as a UN translator. So that's, I mean, there's a part of me that really feels strongly about that aspect of what we're doing. I love personally engineering. I enjoy the challenge of of solving some sort of problem. But as a societal thing, I feel like the motivation for doing NASA or anything else um, is about that humanity part of it. So even if it weren't engineering for NASA, I think I'd be, I'll work on environmental technologies or something that betters the world. Like I wouldn't necessarily be interested in working in, I don't know, improved techniques for extracting oil from geological sites. So that's, I mean, right, that like you have to couple those, like the thing that I love personally and it's problem solving or whatever, with the thing that I feel passionate about, and that's getting humanity to be on the same page and leaving the world a little bit better than when I started. But yeah, that human aspect of that, I think that that particularly, I would say, like at that also at the same time, right, the parallel of the 60s, but even in the 80s with the Cold War and having Chekhov on board and having a diverse crew on board. I think that was a very visually apparent thing for a child. I don't actually know that at that age, the science or engineering really made that much. The sense of exploration may have been there, but I don't know that the science or engineering really resonated as much as a kid.
Some nice comments coming in from people. Carlos saying Bobak is idic. It's very cool. And then somebody, Carlos as well, saying, "Is that a tricorder?" Yes, I'm certain that is a tricorder.
It is a tricorder. Yeah.
Yeah. You've got the NX-01 back there. I see a little corner of the 1701D, and it looks like a Lego space shuttle as well.
That's right. Yeah, you're hitting all the marks.
Yeah, well done. So, excellent. All right, Ken, question for you. Do we want to do a little bit of business here and then bring in our next guest?
Well, I'm not sure our next guest is still there. I actually just posed that question to Brendan, but I'm looking at all the different cameras. Oh, there she is. She is back. So yeah, why don't we do that then, John? Why don't we do a little bit of business and then bring our guest back? Actually, before we do the business part, though, we should remind people how to get in touch with us. Click on the Zoom link or call in. Look, maybe you know a bunch of people who work at JPL. Maybe you know a bunch of people who work for NASA. If you don't, and you've always had a question you wanted to ask, 669-900-6833 is the phone number, 669-900-6833, or click on the Zoom link, like I said before. And yes, we do have a bit of business to do. Although, honestly, John, I've actually been doing a bit of business. That sounds weird when I say it that way. The whole time we've been here, though, because, yeah, right there.
Yeah,
sitting pretty, riding high.
Enough, in our chat, somebody said, "What shirt is he wearing?"
What shirt is he wearing? Indeed, yeah. So we've been telling you about the shop that we have for a while, or sort of the reinvigorated, I would say, shop that we have, which you go to missionlogpodcast.com and then click on shop, and you will see all kinds of new shirts and designs and fun things there. Yes, Meredith, number one listener to Mission Log Live, Meredith beat me by like a day in getting her shirts. But yeah, I'm rocking the Lieutenant J right here, which I'm kind of excited about. Other new things in the store include Isolinear Ken and John. Carbon Chauvinism gets a reboot here. It's Da Vinci meets the 23rd century, and of course we got a bunch of old favorites as well, John.
Yes, we do. We have the Italics Mining Corporation. We have the old school Cool as Kirk. We have Ethos, Pathos, Logos. That was from way back when Mission Log started, back in those Halcyon TOS days. So, and of course, our tribute to the late, great Nova Squadron. Long may she reign. So yes, go check out the new and old designs, and some new designs going up and some new old designs going up over the coming weeks. So very exciting. Again, just go to missionlogpodcast.com, click on shop. All those designs are not just for t-shirts. You can get them on mugs, stickers, notebooks, tapestries. If you have a lack of tapestries in your home, Well, we can fill that void for you with a mission log tapestry. Tons of stuff to check out and make your own truly unique Trek-ish gear. So get yours today at missionlogpodcast.com.
So we do have another guest that we do want to introduce, John.
We do. She has been so patient, and we're so glad. Holly Amos, friend of the show, friend of ours. So glad to see you here tonight. Holly, now we have you on specifically to talk about your current Trek project, but not unlike your friend Bobak here, and even ourselves, you have a story of going from fan to professional. Tell us a bit about your background in the world of Trek.
Oh gosh, that's a long story.
You got 30 minutes.
Well, the short story, I'll tell the short story. The short story
Okay.
is I had been a Star Trek fan my whole life, and my dad was a Star Trek fan when he was a kid. He watched the original series. I was born 16 months before The Next Generation premiered, so like I have been exposed to Star Trek before I was even aware of what was going on. I was actually working as a professional organizer, and if anybody doesn't know what that is, if you just watch one of those hoarding shows, the people that they bring in to help, that's what I was doing. And I actually went to a Star Trek convention and met John Van Sitters, who's the vice president of product development at CBS, the studio that owns the majority of Star Trek. And he and I started following each other on Twitter, and they were actually in the process of moving their office and going into a space that had warehouse space. They were in a shared office up in Santa Monica, and they didn't have a lot of space, just a couple offices and like a little library space. But they had a lot of stuff in storage, in third-party storage facilities, and they really wanted to get it all collected under one roof. And they needed somebody that had the ability to do that. So they actually hired me, not only because I was a Star Trek fan and was knowledgeable on it, but because I was actually working at the time as a professional organizer as well. And their division, consumer products, is actually technically aligned under the marketing department. And I actually have a degree in marketing too. So I was there for 5 years doing licensing and product development specifically for the Star Trek brand. I think the only other thing I worked on while I was there was Twilight Zone. The three of us that were in that office are all Star Trek fans. And after I left last December, one of the licensees actually hired me to work for them. And I am now an assistant producer on the brand new Star Trek collectible card game called Adversaries. So that's what I'm doing now.
All right. I want to ask you about the card game in just a moment, but I'm beginning to wonder if there isn't some kind of curse associated with third-party storage facilities and Star Trek, because we know a guy.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, what was the weirdest thing that you came across? Because I've heard stories about the whole storage facility thing where people will, like, buy something and then they'll like put it someplace and they'll forget about it. What was the most surprising thing you came across? What was the weirdest thing you came across? And if those are two different things, please answer both.
Well, one of the things that they actually have in storage, oh God, I mean, they have a lot of props and costumes that still actually belong to CBS. I think the ships, some of the ships are, it wasn't weird that we came across them. It was just surprising that they were still in possession of CBS. The original Borg cube.
Whoa.
Wow.
Wow.
The one that it doesn't light up green, it lights up yellow like it originally did. But it is basically what the industry calls a kit bash. So it was a lot of little pieces, actually the reject pieces of things, like the pieces that are in between the pieces that you're supposed to be using. And then it's just like spray painted. And there's actually some Millennium Falcon pieces on it too. So
Nice.
I thought the Millennium Falcon was a kit bash originally. Although that's weird, right?
Was.
Because you break a bunch of models, you put them together, and everybody's like, "Well, that's the ship for me," and so then you got to make a model of that, which is kind of weird.
Funny, Chris Riker is saying in the chat right now that the nerdometers are maxing out. He is true. Might have to move her to a geekoscope. Need to switch equipment there. So yes, good. Thank you all for playing along. And please call in or text us if you have any questions. We would love to hear from you, because I see you there, John Cooley, saying people have questions. Well, go ahead and call us and let us know in person what those questions are. John McQuillan says the sprues, those are those little pieces in between the pieces on your model kits. So,
oh, they have a name.
They do.
I learned something.
They have a name. Yes. So Holly, you mentioned it before we could. Star Trek Adversaries.
Yes.
What's that all about?
So Star Trek Adversaries it's licensed, so it's a real deal.
Okay.
It is by a company called Puppet Master Games. I met my boss, who is the creator of the game and the head of the company, very briefly when he came in to talk to John Van Sitters, my former boss, and he actually then messaged me on Instagram, of all places, to hire me. So it's an online collectible card game. So if you played the physical card game back in like the early 2000s by a company called Decipher, it's just like that, but it's online. And it's really fun. I had never played a CCG before. They hired me because I was a Star Trek expert and they needed somebody on staff that could do what I did. And I ended up doing all of the sound bites for the character cards. There's crew cards, and there's ships that you actually play, and then you can beam crew onto it to buff the numbers on the ships, which it has an attack and a shielding. But it's just like any other CCG, and I had never played before, and it's actually really fun. There's basic math involved, but it's also very strategic, the order in which you do things. I just got off a Twitch feed and I played a couple of people. It's a really fun game. And that's coming from somebody who, again, had never played before.
And what would one have to do if one wanted to play Star Trek Adversaries?
So we launched on Steam last week after a couple of months of being in kind of a testing phase via our website directly. But you guys can actually go to steam.com and search for Star Trek Adversaries and download it there. Right now we're on PC and Mac. And we have plans to be coming to mobile later this year, if all goes well and we don't have a lot of technical issues. But I mean, it's an online game. We're going to have technical issues. So we're working with a lot of our players right now to work out bugs. It's still technically in what they call early access. So we're very transparent about the fact that there are going to be bugs. And we actually have a Discord channel where people have been not only reporting bugs, but reporting or making suggestions about how they think the game could be better. And we are really, really taking those to heart.
Okay, so now I have to ask like a nerdy gaming question. You never played a collectible card game before. Now you're playing this one. Has it opened you up to like playing other ones as well? And will you soon be like hosting a tabletop podcast of your own?
That's a good question. I quite honestly have not had time to go in and play another one. It has occurred to me that I probably should play something like Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering, because I feel like it would make me a better player on Adversaries. I just haven't had time yet. The game's taking up most of my time.
A handful of very important questions online here. One wanting to know if the Voyager set will come with coffee. So that is definitely something we have to know. We have to work out. John asks, so are there enough cards to collect that I may need to hire a professional organizer? So that is a possibility. And very importantly, somebody asks, what happened to Bobak? Is he in the pattern buffer? No, Bobak is still there. He's patiently holding on. But we're going to put both of you on hold for just a second because we have a caller. We have John patiently waiting. John, are you there?
Yeah. Hey, John, Ken. Hey, long-time listener, first-time caller with a question for both Holly and Bobak.
Nice.
My question is this. Both of you have had Star Trek characters based on you or your likeness or appearance in Star Trek books and comics. Have either one of you ever thought of continuing the adventures of your characters based on yourselves through, like, I don't know, fan fiction or a fan film or other media of the card game? You know, Holly, maybe a card with, your character in there. Follow-up question, what are your characters up to now in the worlds of Star Trek? So thanks, everybody, and go Niners.
This is so awesome. I wish you could see the look of shock and surprise on Holly's face right now.
I'm surprised that anybody knows. Yeah, Bobak and I were, when I worked at CBS in the licensing department, I obviously dealt with a lot of the licensings. One of them was IDW, which is the current holder of the license for comic books. And one of the most prevalent writers there is Mike Johnson. In fact, I think he's written the most Star Trek comics ever at this point. And he basically just puts his friends in. And so he came into the office one day and said that he wanted to put me in, and he wanted to put my coworker in. And then he said that he wanted to have a guy in it, and I suggested Bobak because we haven't said it, but Bobak's actually my best friend. So we put him into a comic book, and so we're in a comic book together. And then I think you had Dayton Ward on the
Yes.
show.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Dayton and his
Never again that guy.
Dayton and his writing partner, sometime writing partner, Kevin Dillmore, actually gave me a character in one of the novels as well. So I'm in both timelines because the comic book was actually the Kelvin timeline, and the novel was in, and I'm actually the same character in both. We talked about it, and I'm the same character in both. I just am on a different life path. So uh, in regards to whether or not I can, do something more with it, or if it can like be in the game, I've actually talked about that with my boss. She could technically be in the game, just her prime character though, because we actually don't have the license for the Kelvin universe, which means unfortunately Bobak can't be in it.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
but
so you're
Bobak-
from the Kelvin. You're from the Kelvin timeline then, Bobak.
Apparently, I only exist in one timeline, and I don't know what happened in the nominal timeline. It's okay.
So wait, what was because I didn't know about this before we got here. What were your characters, Bobak? What was your character? And then Holly, I want to hear what you were too.
I'm an anthropologist. Is that right? I think. Yeah.
Yeah, you're a science officer.
I made first contact with more than anybody else.
Yes, that's a reference to you being in NASA. Yeah. So we tried to kind of so he's a science officer, and he's made more first contact than anybody else in the fleet, and that was a reference to him working for NASA. And my character is actually a science officer too. She's a flora and fauna expert, and that's actually a reference to my mother, who loves to garden and birdwatch. And then in the prime timeline, I'm a nurse on the Endeavor.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's wow. Well, thank you for that question, John, because it just revealed so much about these two. That was pretty excellent. By the way, and you mentioned that you guys are friends in real life, and that's kind of why we have you both here on with us tonight. And I mentioned Bobak's cosplay that I just thought was so cool. You were a part of that too.
Yeah. Bobak doesn't know how to sew. Bobak, do you know how to sew?
Yeah, it's true. I don't know how to sew. Are you gonna tell the story?
Yeah, you can tell it.
Oh no, it's great. No, that was I wanted to cosplay for a while, but my girlfriend and Holly both helped quite a bit. Like Holly got a bunch of reference photos, and then my girlfriend and her went in there and sewed the whole thing. So I had very little to do except to wear it. And I had a lot of fun. I mean, it's still sitting in my closet, just a few feet away.
But then, Holly, you were there as Dr. Jillian Taylor, though.
I was, yeah, and that's actually my in-game handle now for Adversaries. Is I'm Dr. Jillian T. So I actually adopted that persona for the game. But I cosplayed her in her little pink suit with the pleated skirt that you see her giving a tour of the Cetacean Institute, and I've worn that I think 3 times now to Star Trek Las Vegas.
Wow, well done.
See,
We had a good crew. We had a Sulu, we had a Kirk. It was pretty good.
And then randomly another friend who it wasn't planned, and it is somebody who I'm friends with who's a Star Trek fan, and he actually works for US Soccer. He showed up as the owner of FlexiCorp.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, with the mouse. Yeah, he had a mouse in his pocket. He had the button that said "I quit smoking."
That's no, wait. Was Grant Sulu?
Yes, Grant Imahara from Mythbusters was our Sulu.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that. It was an excellent group cosplay.
Yeah, it was fun.
Done.
It was fun.
See, not to drive a point with the poll, by the way, but you people, if it's only 6% going, 94% not going, this is what you're missing. Well, this and us at a table and lots of drinking and panels.
Yes.
And lots of drinking.
Yes.
I want to. All right. So this is one of those stupid questions that nobody should ever ask, but I'm going to do it anyway. Bobak, we have an idea from you because of what you had talked about earlier, as far as, sort of like a UN on a starship. I'm curious because Holly, we've established that you were a Star Trek fan, from way back. What is it about Star Trek for you?
Oh, God. That's a good question. I wasn't even in any sort of position to be like as philosophical as Bobak was, because I was exposed to it before I was even aware. I think of a lot of it has to do with, just spending time with my family. I do have very fond memories of my dad turning the Next Generation on and me hearing the music and like running up the hallway to go watch it and sit down in the living room on the floor and watch it with my parents. But over time as I got older, it was the same reasons Bobak is a fan of it. It's a utopian society, and it's a better vision of the future. And I think that's what we should be striving for, and that's ultimately why I have I have a lot of respect for people that actually work in real space. Because Bobak and I actually have a joke. He works in real space, and I work in fake space. But what he's doing is a lot more important than what I am doing. But I mean, the franchise just continues to just be a better representation of a future that we could have if we want to.
Our listener Earl has a question for Bobak. He says, what was the first robotic mission that you were aware of as a kid that might have altered your own orbit toward your current career? And Earl says, I'm ancient, so the first ones I was aware of were Viking 1 landing and Voyager's lifting off.
So yeah, those are amazing missions, and I think today, as like a student of the field, I appreciate them a lot more. As a kid, they were like history lessons, and I don't think I was super aware of it. I remember watching Shuttle growing up, but mostly it was Pathfinder in 1997, which was the first of our current kind of era at Mars that really just it made it very real to me because it was so it's, it's 4th of July. It lands on 4th of July 1997. That's when we started having like Netscape Navigator, whatever 2.0 or something, and you could go to JPL's website and see pictures that were within a day or less from Mars. So this whole idea that Mars was like an alive place and we were doing things on another planet, that's when that kind of became real to me, and that's when I sort of realized that that's a job that you could have. And then the reality of what that job is like is a lot less romantic once you start working there, but it's still amazing. It's a wonderful job. I thought I was going to be like I was playing a video game driving a car on Mars, and it's definitely nothing like that, but still very happy with how it turned out.
It's kind of a bummer that
Did he freeze?
Oh, Ken.
What?
Ken, you think it's a bummer, but then you froze. And we all collectively thought that was a bummer.
Yes.
Okay, wait. Can you? So am I back?
You're
Yes.
back. You're here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I forgot what I was saying. No. So I mean, it's kind of a bummer, but we live in a world where for some of us, space just kind of got boring, which is sort of terrible. I'm wondering, you've got Jeff Bezos doing what Jeff Bezos does now. You've got Elon Musk doing, what he does, plus like 5 other people, it seems. Where do you see interest in space today? And are you bothered that it takes a rock star to get people interested again, or do you see it as, hey, great, more people are interested? Or I'm sorry, I'm assuming that more people are interested. Talk to me about where you see interest now.
I think you're right. I think more people are interested, and it starting. I would like to say starting kind of with curiosity, and then sort of with a kind of snowball rolling forward with SpaceX's launches and landings, and now obviously Blue Origin is in the mix, and we're seeing a lot of small companies, Rocket Lab, CubeSats. So the field's expanding. Interest is expanding. I've never seen more NASA shirts than I do nowadays, which is amazing. And I mean, I think what gets people excited, as long as they go in there and learn about it, it's fine. My only concern largely with any sort of the Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos kind of thing is that we don't hear as much about their engineers and the folks working there as I would like to see, just because I know a lot of people work at SpaceX and they represent a large diversity of backgrounds, and I think I'd like to see more of that. I would like to see less of the focus on the the lone great, man or woman kind of myth, and more of the, oh well, there's 6,000 people working at SpaceX right now who make that happen. Because I think that's the reality is, we know we're not all going to be Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. And so but I still want people to be excited about it, and I don't want them to feel like let down if they don't achieve, CEO of a major corporation in their life, because there's a ton of very rewarding work to be done, and you feel like you're part of hopefully making the world a better place. So I think that's the only drawback, but I'll take whatever people get excited about science, honestly. Like it's not enough of that right now.
Bobak, one of our listeners asks if there's any update on the Cannae drive. First of all, did I say that correctly? That's question number one. Question number two, is there an update on said drive?
Is that I think that's the microwave one that the Chinese were last testing. And then I think we are as well through a grant at NASA Johnson. I have not heard anything about it in a while.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
So I'm willing to bet that you guys didn't know that we're going to do a lightning round in just a minute, did you?
A lightning round of what?
I see the group chat.
Yeah,
okay.
that's
excellent.
It's so funny, Ken, that every week we do a lightning round, and somehow every week I forget to let our guests know that there is a lightning round. I should really be on top of that. Yeah.
Well, it hasn't been a disaster so far, but there's always a first time.
We keep trying. Yeah.
So the lightning round is coming up in just a moment, but first I want to remind people of something that they can do when this show is over. Go out and learn about science. That's thing number one.
Mm-hmm.
Thing number two, of course, would be to check out another one of the Roddenberry podcast shows. Probably an easier thing to do. Priority One starts at 11:30 Eastern, 8:30 Pacific every Tuesday night. So right after we're done, grab yourself something to drink or whatever, then come back and watch Elijah, Kenna, Tony, and Winters is actually back after quite the hiatus. They'll bring you news from all over the Star Trek multiverse, TV and movie news, gaming news, literary reviews, plus a whole lot more. As I say, they kick off at 1:30. So when we're done, relax and then gear back up for a whole bunch of Star Trek talk with Priority One, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, streaming live as it happens, facebook.com/Priority One podcast. That address again is facebook.com/Priority One podcast. And if you can't stay up that late to listen to it, a new episode comes out every Friday. What you'd be watching today is sort of the raw thing. And boy, is it raw. And then Friday, they have this like well-polished gem that comes out. They're the same show. Oh, you won't think so, but they are. So if you can't listen tonight, or if you can't join them tonight, download it this weekend and just, subscribe. Then you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah. Hey, before we do that lightning thing, other Holly online, as opposed to Holly we're talking to right now, Holly Paddock has a question for Holly, and it's a question I have for myself too. What is the time commitment like for playing rounds of Star Trek Adversaries? Not familiar with this sort of thing, and I like the idea, but have little time like everyone else in the world.
So you can go into one of two things. You can either play versus one of our computers, an AI, and those rounds are fairly short. You start at 30, both of them start at 30 health, and I can play around between 5 and 10 minutes. You can go up to playing very difficult AIs, and that takes a little bit longer because they start at like 60 health. And then you can also play player versus player. You can go into multiplayer and queue up, and it'll match you with somebody else, possibly on the other side of the planet. I think the longest round I've ever played has been player versus player, and it was a half hour.
Nice.
So
okay.
It not terribly long. I can usually get a couple rounds in an hour. So.
And you do that like 12, 14 times a day, something like that.
I play it a lot. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
All right. So the lightning round, we're going to ask you both to answer each one of these questions, although one of them I think might be for one of you specifically. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Who's your captain? How should we do this, actually? Should we do Holly first and then Bobak?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Who's your captain, Holly?
Cisco.
Bobak?
Card.
Okay.
Picard. Okay. Favorite Star Trek bad guy?
Borg Queen.
Nice. Well played. Ken just gave the look of disapproval.
I didn't give the look of disapproval. I winced. There's a difference. I'm not disapproving of Holly liking the Boy Queen.
We'll have words. Yeah. Okay.
Or maybe
that's
Kai
fine.
Wynn. Kai Wynn also, because she's just awful and I hate her and you're supposed to hate her.
Okay.
That's true.
All right.
Bobak?
V'ger.
Ooh.
You think V'ger's a bad guy, really?
Yeah, destroy the earth.
Well, he was a child, wasn't he?
I mean, it's a villain. It's the villain character.
Oh,
all right,
man.
And we have one at work. I get to see it all the time. I'm like,
hey,
that's true.
for name checking motion picture and V'ger, you get a virtual high five from me. That is how you win all the points in my book, right there. Well done, sir.
Actually, I just realized the question that was for Bobak, he already answered. He answered it a couple of ways. So why don't we skip down to favorite Star Trek starship? Holly.
Enterprise D. Well, wait, hold on.
You just like totally redeemed yourself though, because I actually have a tattoo of one of the decorations on the warp nacelle from the Enterprise D.
Are we talking Federation?
No, it doesn't have to be.
No, not necessarily.
Okay, well, if it's Federation, it's definitely the D. As Bobak likes to say, she loves the D.
Okay.
But I do love Cardassian ships as well. I really love I love Cardassian aesthetics. So like the Galore class ships are pretty great.
Okay. Bobak, favorite
do you
Star
want to
Trek?
answer this for me?
No, if you say it, I will. I know where you live.
No, go ahead.
Don't do it.
I love the Excelsior.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
Cool thing about the Excelsior is if you were a Next Gen fan, you only got to see it like every other episode.
Yeah,
so.
Every ship is the Excelsior. So
except for the
class. Yeah.
Except for the D.
I hate Excelsior classes.
Yeah, I feel you. All right. Holly, have you seen the animated series?
Yes, I cosplayed somebody from the animated series last year.
Yes, you did, and it was awesome. Bobak, seen the animated series?
I sure have.
Good. All right. Glad we didn't come to blows there. All right. Favorite scientist from history? Now, you know what we're gonna. Yeah. Go. Holly, go ahead. You have a favorite scientist?
Favorite scientist from history? I don't think I've ever. I can't do that in a speed round.
Could still be living. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean like a dead scientist. His favorite scientist.
I don't know.
Okay.
You actually could just name a scientist. Nobody's going to check you on it.
Yeah, no, we're not. No.
Bob Smith.
Good. Okay. I mean,
that guy he's like a total hack as far as science is concerned. I can't believe you picked.
He's a flat earther, which is the worst part.
Yikes.
Nice. What about you, sir?
Mine's Newton, and not just because of the science, because that's amazing, but because he also invented the ridges on quarters to prevent people from shaving down coins. He was the head of the treasury for a while. This is a weird thing. He was the head of the treasury. It was supposed to be a cushy job. He invented the ridges on coins because people would shave down the edge of coins to make new coins. And if you had the ridges on the edge of the coin, you couldn't shave on the edge of the coin without knowing that it was tampered with. So they would like take all these like filings off the edge of a coin, make a new coin out of like 3 or 4 filings. And then, so he was a very clever gentleman. I mean, he also experimented on his own body, which was kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
But,
and he made that pen-based handheld computer for Apple, which was just weird.
I mean, right? Yeah. Way ahead of its time.
We are so close.
Wait. Can I change my answer?
Okay, go ahead.
Does Carl Sagan count?
Yes, Carl Sagan counts.
Okay, then Carl.
Yes.
I'm surprised you picked anybody from a poker game in TNG, to be honest with you. I thought that would be the first round would be Hawking or Newton or anybody sitting around the poker table.
I've got Carl Sagan on a t-shirt. I love him.
Nice.
We have one final question that we always end with, and one day somebody will answer it differently. Have you ever been to Vulcan, Alberta, Canada?
I have not.
Bobak?
But
my former boss has.
Okay, doesn't count. Bobak?
I have not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that question lives for another day. Holly, Bobak, thank you both so much. Really quickly, if people want to follow you, Twitter, someplace social media, where should they go?
Oh, if you want to follow me personally, I'm on all the social medias, Twitter, Instagram, at Holly Amos 22. It's my favorite number. And please follow Star Trek Adversaries. You can find us on all of the social medias as well. Just search Star Trek Adversaries. It'll pop up.
Bobak?
And
Bobak.
I am Tweets Out Loud, all one word, on Twitter and Instagram. So,
Very cool. Thank you both so much for being with us this week. And it was a true pleasure to talk to you. And really just thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
So,
you.
Mission Log Live is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Executive producer Rod Roddenberry. Technical production on Mission Log Live by Infinity Networks. Producer Brandon Bradley. Be sure to visit podcast.roddenberry.com for the latest from the Roddenberry Podcast Network, including not just Mission Log and Mission Log Live, but also Women at Warp and Priority One.
At Holly Amos 22. It's my favorite number. And please follow Star Trek Adversaries. You can find us on all of the social medias as well. Just search Star Trek Adversaries. It'll pop up.
Bobak?
And
Bobak.
I am Tweets Out Loud, all one word, on Twitter and Instagram. So,
Very cool. Thank you both so much for being with us this week. And it was a true pleasure to talk to you. And really just thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
So,
you.
Mission Log Live is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Executive producer Rod Roddenberry. Technical production on Mission Log Live by Infinity Networks. Producer Brandon Bradley.